Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the Distance Learning Roundtable, starring USDLA's Secretary and Chairman of our important awards committee, Wendy Pate. I am Hope Katz-Gibbs, Communications Director for the U.S. Distance Learning Association at usdla.org. We can't wait to tell you more about our awards. Her day job is the Associate Director of Web Campus Online Graduate Courses at Stevens Institute of Technology, so you can learn more at stevens.edu. But the purpose of today's episode is to shine a light on Dr. Peter Noonan. He has been the Superintendent of the Falls Church City Public Schools since 2017. Previously, he worked for Fairfax County Public Schools Division and served as superintendent for Fairfax City Public Schools. And Peter has been a principal and a teacher and so many amazing, amazing things. But today we are talking about an award that he won in June of 2024 from USDLA. And we're so excited about this. It was the USDLA Outstanding Leadership Award, and his winning entry is Leading with Love: Pandemic Performance and Minimizing Learning Loss in the Pre-K through 12th Grade Falls Church City Public Schools. Really impressive work. So Wendy, I'm going to kick it over to you so you and Peter can talk about this amazing award that he won.
Thank you, Hope. So good morning, Peter. Our first question for you is, can you summarize what you did to earn this prestigious award?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Wendy, for having me, and Hope for setting that up with such kindness. It's funny, as I reflect on my experiences, it's always nice to hear them again and remember the work that I've done. But first of all, let me share this. Like, I carry it with me everywhere I go now. So I'm really proud of this award that I won from the USDLA this year. Our award really was rooted in the work that we did during the pandemic to kind of minimize learning loss and to lead with this idea and this notion of love. And it really began prior to the pandemic. And we are in a really unique area just outside of Washington, D.C., a very small school division that's super relational. We're very close with our families. We know all of our kids, but in the fall of really, 2019, spring of 2019, summer, and into the fall, then we kind of knew something was happening. We were all watching the news very closely about what was going on, and we were aware that this pandemic had broken out. And we sort of serendipitously, prior to having to close on Friday the 13th of 2020, we knew something was happening, but we had a retreat with our administrators. And during that retreat, 3 weeks in advance of that closing date, I said to the administrators, what if we put together like some online lesson plans for kids to do for 2 weeks? Because at the time we thought, oh, we'll close for 2 weeks and then we'll all be back and things will be cool. But obviously that didn't happen. But what was really, I think, important was that we had a sense that something was coming, and our team was able to build quickly an infrastructure that would allow us to be successful as we stood up an online learning program during the pandemic to minimize learning loss. And so as time progressed, we were able to not only leverage those 2 weeks or 3 weeks of lesson plans that everybody had put together, but we were able to then, when we closed, say, all right, now we're going to take what we put in place and we're going to extend it out even further. And all of those systems had been set up. So that was thing one. But thing two, that was, I think, most and maybe is equally important in keeping the learning going, was this idea of leading with love and making sure that all of our kids were taken care of. So we utilized our online experiences to make sure that kids continue to receive, support of school psychologists, our social workers, making sure that parents had connections to schools in ways that were unique and different than we'd ever experienced before, but became sort of normalized during the pandemic. And to that extent, we were able to really, I think, in many ways, not only minimize the learning loss, but also minimize some of the mental health issues that I think have spurned from the pandemic. And then the last thing we did about leading with love was utilizing all of our technological capabilities and our online relationships with our families to make sure that one, all of our families were fed. And so we invited all of our families in for food pickup through our online programming, but also making sure that, and this was something that we didn't anticipate, but was sort of a nice outcome, was because we transitioned to this online experience and needed all hands on deck. All of our bus drivers, all of our food service workers weren't furloughed during the pandemic, so we kept all of our employees employed the entire time as well, working to do other things and being repurposed. So I think all of those things were really unique to our situation and to our system. And in the end, Wendy, I think that's what was recognized by USDLA. And, you know, going through, I'll just say this, and then I'll end this sort of question is, you know, going through the pandemic was perhaps the most challenging experience for me as a school superintendent that I've ever experienced in my entire career. And we knew all along that if we got through it, we would be okay and our kids would be okay. But to be on the backside recognized for our work is it's really touching, because going through it, we thought we can't do anything right. Everything, we're getting yelled at by everybody, and we're really trying hard. And in the end, we feel like we did a really great job. And so thank you for the recognition of that.
Thank you. My next question is, what have you seen post-pandemic based on the work that you did during the challenge brought on by COVID-19?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. I think first is we saw ultimately what we were after, which was that minimized learning loss. We actually have been able to, and since the pandemic, continue to be ranked as the #1 school division in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia based on our student outcomes. And that's because we didn't experience the same learning loss that other school divisions, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but across the country, experienced. So that's one thing. We are seeing less, I think, mental health issues than we were seeing before. We have lots of families that have, and I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but I'll just say it, is that they are fully invested in the City of Falls Church schools because they felt taken care of during the pandemic through some of the work that we were able to provide to them through our distance learning opportunities. But we've also seen the technology that we used during the pandemic leveraged for the good post-pandemic too. You know, part of our infrastructure that we put into all of our schools were, you know, cameras in the ceiling so that teachers could stream their lessons. And so now what we're seeing is, you know, when a kid's out for an extended period of time, perhaps for a medical reason or for something else, they're using those cameras effectively to stream instruction. So kids are there without having to be there. I think we found a really unique niche in some ways to be much more equitable in the services that we provide, particularly to our parents. And what I mean by that specifically is that many of our back to school nights now and our teacher conferences are held online as opposed to in person and face to face, because we do have a group of parents who, for whatever reasons, you know, they may have 2 jobs, they may work at night, but they can't come to our back to school nights, but can still attend our back to school nights on their phones or on their computers at work. And so I think opening up the possibilities of what we did during the pandemic, post-pandemic, have really allowed us to close the gaps in equity and access to our schools. And we're really, really excited about that.
Great, wonderful. Well, just curious, what, if anything, might you have done differently when you see what has happened?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think all of us who were in leadership positions during the pandemic have tried to do that reflection. And I think the first reflection is maybe I would have quit. No, I'm just kidding. But I think some of my colleagues might have said that. But I think some of the things that we might have done differently would be around community engagement. I think we tried really hard to do a lot of work around community engagement to express and explain how we were doing things, why we were doing things a certain way, that that with some it resonated and with others it didn't for varieties of purposes and reasons. So I think I would look at that. But I also think I might have outfitted our schools differently. We were very fortunate to be in a position where we were one-to-one in all of our schools. So when the day came that we had to close, we were able to quickly set up a process where kids could come in and pick up their devices and be ready for online learning. I think one of the things that I might do differently that we've actually changed some policies on are our younger kids taking devices home just in case, because you never know kind of what is going to happen, whether it's you've become sick and you just need to have your devices for whatever purposes. But I think having the infrastructure built out a little bit more in that circumstance would have been really useful to us. But again, it's one of those things you just don't plan for. I'm hoping it's a once in a lifetime experience, but you just never know. So I think those are a couple things.
Excellent, excellent. So from your perspective as a superintendent, what would you recommend other school districts do to be prepared for the unforeseen if this does happen again?
Yeah. I think one of our mantras is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that's, I think, in every circumstance, whether it's school safety and security, whether it's curriculum and instruction, or whether it's a pandemic. And I think, having a plan, we have a fully digitalized learning plan now in our system that we didn't have before, that we can implement in a heartbeat if needed. And I think that that's really important for us to have sort of quote unquote in the can. So if something were to happen again, we could very quickly move towards that. And to sort of drive a finer point into that, we did have, COVID is still in our community, a lot of it actually, and it's starting to mitigate a little bit. We're seeing the rates come down. But about 2 months ago, as school was starting, everybody went to school and got sick. That's what happens when you co-locate a lot of people together. And we thought at one point we may have to close one of our schools because we were seeing nearly 50% of our staff had COVID. And rather than panic and trying to figure out what to do, we were easily able to say, well, we know what to do now. We will send all of our kids home with their devices. We'll stand up our learning plan and we'll move forward. So we're prepared if anything were to happen in that vein. But I also think it cures a lot of things that could happen, whether a roof gets blown off a building because of a tornado or an earthquake happens. We can have school no matter what from anywhere.
Excellent, excellent. So what type of things do you think others in the pre-K through 12th grade world could showcase and potentially win a 2025 USDLA award?
Boy, there's so much good work happening across the country. And there are so many things to highlight. I feel very fortunate that I was the one that was highlighted. I think there's some unique opportunities to see the intersection between distance learning and AI. And I think if someone were to sort of crack the code, if you will, on how to utilize AI really, really well in a pre-K-12 environment, to where it's not seen as demonized or something that's bad, but rather something that can be leveraged for good and can really be utilized to support student learning and create efficiencies for teachers, because we know that one thing teachers always ask for is more time. I think that would be something that could be highlighted, particularly when coupled with distance learning. I recently had an opportunity to hear a couple of speakers that were more sort of futurists and thinkers about what life might look like. And there's some really good stuff out there about whether it's avatars helping with instruction, using AI. And I think that you couple that with distance learning and it can be really powerful, especially in the intervention space where we're working with kids that are struggling to learn in pre-K-12. I think, again, lots of opportunities and some good things happening out there.
Well, great. Peter, I thank you for taking the time to answer my questions today, and I'll throw this back to Hope.
Congratulations, Dr. Peter Noonan, for winning the 2024 U.S. Distance Learning Association Award. And thank you, Wendy, for all the hard work you do as the chairman of the awards committee. Yeah, hold that up. Fabulous. I'm Hope Katz-Gibbs, proud to be the communications director for USDLA. Check us out, usdla.org, and we will talk to you on next month's Distance Learning Roundtable show. Have a great day, everyone.